Thank you so much, Purdeep, for being here for the second time. I'm excited, really excited to be talking to you and hearing a very different side from you. You want to start by taking 30 seconds to tell us a little bit about yourself and exactly what you do.
Sure. I'm a husband, I'm a father, I got two young kids. I have an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old. I'm an entrepreneur. But my biggest passion in life is really helping other entrepreneurs and business professionals in general. So helping them succeed not only on the business side, but also on the personal side as well. We also have a little bit of a niche, you could say. Uh, I would over three-quarters of our clients are actually men. So we tend to do a lot of work with men on their personal performance. So personal performance as husbands, as fathers, as just people within the community. So we have a subset or sub-skill and expertise in working with men as well.
Yeah. And now, before you started helping other people with their business, what have you done, like business wise?
Oh wow! So I grew up in family business. I spent 14 years in the banking world as an executive. I have gone to six different business schools, both in Canada and the US. So I've done a lot when it comes to business. Business is ultimately my passion. I've outside of my family and animals, business and human performance are my two biggest passions. So that's what I do day in and day out is I'm working on my businesses. I have multiple businesses and then also helping other people with their businesses as well.
Pretty cool. At what point in your like business journey was it like, okay, I need to go in to be helping people?
In the business journey or just in helping people in general?
So do you help people besides for business? I mean, helping
Well,
people since the day you were born, you've been helping people in school, I'm sure, and like with your family and stuff like that. But like, you know, helping.
yeah. From a business perspective, about 7 years ago, we started our own firm. And this really stemmed from I was always into helping people because I was an academic tutor. I was a personal trainer at 17. So my entire life I've been helping people. That's basically my core passion. But when it comes to people in business, it's been about 7 years. Even in the corporate world, though, I did a lot of training. I did a lot of mentorship and coaching other executives. So it's been my pretty much my entire adult life journey, but specifically within business, this last you could say decade has been a pretty phenomenal and explosive for us because it's been not that it's always been up, there's a lot of downs as well, but it's been great to be able to work with business owners directly and help them succeed.
Yeah, it's pretty cool because then like you see the results like of their businesses and like it just like a ripple effect that never ends. So tell me about like when you started this business 7 years ago of specifically helping people, what was the biggest challenges you faced at that time?
Well, at that time, the biggest challenge was me because I had to reinvent myself. I came from the corporate world. I was very good at what I did. I had a reputation, I had a brand, I had a plan. I was well on my way to achieving that plan, which is to be a CEO of a major corporation. So when I left, the biggest challenge was me. I had to reinvent myself. I had to reinvent my identity. I had to reinvent my own self-worth as well. Just little things like building back the confidence in terms of being able to. It was almost like I was starting from scratch again. And so I had built this 14-year path, and then all of a sudden just completely went on a different path. And so I had to become a new person and really look deep into seeing who I really was because I'd lost a part of myself through the corporate world. And so this enabled me to really live true to my values, my being, who I really wanted to be and what I really want to achieve in life. So that part was the biggest challenge because once I figured that part out, the business part was the easy part. It was
Because
just really getting myself on track.
yeah. And as the author of like the complete man and like that's like everything you do, how was this like the part that you lost in corporate and then afterwards when you were starting your business, how did that affect like all the other areas of your life?
Well, it's throughout the corporate world, I would say I felt like my destiny was being controlled. My life was being controlled by others. Someone else was controlling my paycheck. Someone else was controlling my progress in my career, setting my hours. Although I had a lot of flexibility as an executive, I had a lot of perks. but I didn't have full control over what I wanted to do. And as a result of that, it was impacting other areas of my life, like my relationship. My marriage was on the rocks for a lot of time when I was in the executive world. Not necessarily as a direct result, but I wasn't getting fed the energy, the full energy that I needed in my career that I could have used in other areas of my life.
So when you afterwards like switched into your business and like you had to like literally start over, did that have like so-called like a worse effect? I don't know if that's the right terminology, but like did it affect it more in a not such a good way, or that that was like still fine?
Yeah, I think because I was doing very well as an executive, got great pay, a ton of perks. And one of my wife's biggest concerns was, okay, well, what's going on here? Because you're going from executive salary to, starting from scratch again. What's going to happen? And so, a lot of people have that concern. A lot of spouses have that concern financially and just in general, right? She was with me and she knew what my game plan was, and then all of a sudden I changed it on her. She had her own concerns, which did cause tension in our relationship for a little bit. And being an entrepreneur, there's always that trying to figure out the balance because I do get caught up in the every once in a while. I get so engaged on the business side that I have to consciously pull myself back and say, okay, I got to spend more time with family. And so that's an ongoing, I'm not going to say challenge, it's just a reflection that I have to be conscious of. So are there times where I would say I'm pretty good at this point where my business adds positive value to our relationship and my kids' lives and so forth. But there were times when, yeah, I didn't feel confident in myself, and I did bring that to the relationship.
So I'm just curious, just because like you mentioned that this got me like thinking, is your wife and kids now involved in your business in some way?
My wife is. So my wife, because of her background and expertise, she's in functional medicine, and because of the work that we do with a lot of executives and CEOs, their health is one of the things that they struggle with the most. So she has been working with my clients on that aspect to the point where she's getting close to stepping out fully on her own. And so she'll probably have her full-blown business, and she's been talking about it for a while. But so to answer your question, yes, she is involved and she's tiptoeing into the realm of having her own business here pretty soon. My kids, uh, not so much, although they do come down and they always ask and what I'm doing, and they always go back. My son Googles me all the time. And so he's like, "Oh, Dad, I checked you out. You got this article or this thing, or you're on YouTube here." So he's checking it out, and they do want to have or be in him and my son and my daughter want to be entrepreneurs at some point. They've talked about it, but I don't know. They're 8 and 10 years old, so they're a little young right now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was like having this conversation with someone just recently about like what we learned from our parents, and like you said, like you've had that experience that like from family, and then like they're most definitely getting it like just being like through osmosis, right? Like learning about business and stuff like that. I want to go more like to the clients and like the people that you help. What do you find is their biggest challenges? You mentioned health, but like what would you pinpoint as like the biggest thing?
Oh, well, there's a few. Well, the biggest thing that most people struggle with until they get to a certain point is that constant balance between achieving in their business and achieving in other areas of their life. And what I mean by that is because when someone is not successful from their own perspective, they're fully into trying to become successful. So they put all their time and energy into the career or their business, right? The majority of their time because they're trying to aim for a goal. What ends up happening though is when you do become successful, you become so used to achieving in your business that you have to raise the bar all the time, and that can leave you kind of shy on the personal side. So the biggest thing is they have goals in their business, but not necessarily goals in their personal life. And so it's that balancing of the two things because we are human beings and our brains are driven by goals or objectives to achieve. So we have to constantly say, okay, what's my goal in my personal life? What's my goal for my health? What's my goal for traveling or having fun or spending time with family? So that is the biggest thing that I see for a lot of people, whether they're on their path to success or even when they've achieved success.
And like notice your brain behind it as a brain engineer, like that caught my eye. And like now you've been talking about that. What do you recommend to someone? Like how should they like have that balance? I guess that was the word you used. And also, is there specific areas that you say like everyone should have goals in?
Sure. Yeah. And I like to use the word harmony versus balance because, and I do use balance from the perspective of, you shift back and forth. But when people hear balance, they typically think of time. And I'm
Yeah,
not talking about time, I'm thinking about energy, right? It's really in harmony because when your life is harmonious, even if you're spending more time in your business, but you come home and your family life has that vibrant energy, you're still in harmony.
yeah.
And it's not necessarily equated to time units. But
First
everybody should have,
the first time I heard that actually was from Jeff Bezos, of like work life harmony. And I was like, I don't know if he's such a good example of it, but it's a good term.
yeah, you know what? Everybody has their slip ups, I'm sure. He's had his challenges as well. And I think at some point he probably had a goal to conquer the world. So, well, yeah, I'm not sure if he's the best person to talk about it. He's done very well, obviously. But everybody should have a goal for their personal health. Everybody should have a goal for their spiritual health. Everybody should have a goal for their relationship. What do they want the relationship to be like? For if you're a parent, what do you want your parenting skills to be like? What kind of relationship do you want to have with your kids? Um, Vacation, travel, and fun. Experiences more, it falls under the experience category. And so having goals in those particular areas. And then also one of the biggest things is we all need meaning and purpose. And so having goals in terms of what your purpose is, that is one of the core ultimate drivers for anybody in terms of being more fulfilled, having better health and vibrancy in life, is to have a strong purpose and contributing to the world. So those are the main elements that people should have goals in.
When you say like let's say goals and like health or even like relationships, like I could see people understand very clearly what they want for their health, right? Like I want to have X amount of weight, X amount of like body fat, whatever. But when it comes to meaning, like how do you have a goal for meaning and purpose?
Well, you got to figure out, just like any goal, how are you going to know that you've achieved that goal? So it's like a measure. If I equate it to business, there's some kind of output that you can measure and say, I'm actually achieving that. So that's how you kind of figure it out. If you're, for example, your goal is to be, let's just say you're a philanthropist and you're giving money. Well, you could have a monetary goal, right? Or let's just say you want to spend time, let's just say spending give volunteer hours. Well, you can measure how many volunteer hours you have. If you have some other impact goal, like with today's technology these days, it's pretty easy to figure out, where you spend your time, what your impact is. So there's always some kind of measure in terms of where, what your purpose or your meaning could be and how that's actually impacting the world.
So it's not so much about like, okay, I want my meaning to get to a certain point. It's like, how am I fulfilling my meaning? And like,
Yes, because meaning in itself essentially is full, like how are you fulfilling it? It's not necessarily an end destination. That is, it's always great to have an end destination. Just say I fed 1,000 people or donated to 1,000 people or whatever that is. But it's also that path to get to that, right? What have you achieved on that path to get to that? And ultimately, if you take a look at purpose and meaning and all those elements, it really comes down to your own personal journey, which is how are you growing and expanding as a result of that? Because through the journey of achieving a meaning or your purpose, you're actually growing as an individual. And that is what is even more meaningful as well. Yes, you're contributing, but what have you learned? What have you changed about yourself? And typically what ends up happening is people go through their journey. That's what they tend to identify more with. Like if you take a look at an aging population, majority of people become less, how do I say it? They become more chill in their approach, right? The things that used to bug them before don't bug them as much because there's wisdom, there's experience. And so that is growth. So those are the types of things that really bring, you can say, the fulfillment aspect meaning and all the other goals that you have. It's ultimately how have I changed as a person? How have I evolved?
Yeah, it's interesting, like what you said about like as the person ages, you could like literally see it when if you know someone who like goes through like some sort of like big some or life experience or some sort of event, like literally see like the before and after of them on that. Um, but what you said about like the purpose and like the actions that we do and who we become, it's actually not just for the meaning and the purpose, it's for every single one of those categories, like who you become while you're becoming healthier, while you grow your business, like that's a big one. I'm curious, from those categories, which one did you personally struggle with the most?
Out of those categories, the biggest struggle would be I've always been a growth person myself. I've never struggled with that. It's probably been the relationship side. And primarily because if I say the reasons why is because our we had to come together from a relationship standpoint. Like there's a lot of dynamics that happened in our relationship, but that was probably the biggest challenge that I've had over the last, you know, since we've been married, for example. Our relationship is great now, and it's evolved night and day. But there was a huge challenge at points throughout our marriage together. We've been married 12 years. So that has been my biggest challenge.
Yeah, when you say relationships, do you include in that like other relationships also?
Yeah, because there's your intimate relationship that you have with your spouse or your partner, and then there's relationships with siblings, friends, family members. It's the ones that are the closest to you that mean the most to you. Typically, we all, I don't want to use numbers, but we have a circle of people that we are connecting with on a regular basis. Those common people that we see once, twice, three times, maybe even more during the week.
Everyone
Those are the
close
types.
to them on their like right now, right?
Yeah, yeah, like whether
Know
it's with
exactly what you're
kids,
talking
family,
about. Yeah.
siblings, parents, for example. Those are the types of relationships that are important if they mean something to you and they bring you value, or they're maybe they're even causing some tension in your life. You gotta address those.
Yeah. Um, from those six, which one do you find most people struggle with, like from the people that you work with?
Uh, well, I don't know if there's one that really stands out. Purpose and meaning is definitely one. Health is typically another one, and then marriage and relationships. Like those are very common. Although we take a look at people and we say, oh, they're in a great marriage or relationship through our studies and through the research, because we've worked with over 4,000 people through our research that we've done. 8 out of 10 of them are struggling in their relationship in some way.
Wow, that's a
Yeah,
really high number.
yeah. There's either a lack of passion, a lack of fulfillment, lack of common goals, or some people just stay in relationships because it's convenient for kids, or they don't want to lose their wealth, or whatever it might be. I would say that's probably one of the biggest ones, as well as people get to a point, and this is very common specifically for men, they get to a point where they get disconnected from life because it's all about achieving, 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 and then they get really disconnected. And men aren't well, I'm not going to say they're social, but the way they are structured, right, is their social support network isn't as strong as women. And because men tend to hold things in. So it men struggle from that perspective quite a bit. So there's a number of things. I wouldn't say it's common across the board. Relationships definitely, and purpose is another one, and then health.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that part of what you do is like building that community for those men so they're not just there by themselves.
Yeah,
Um,
we have a community that we've created for men if they don't have their own. But I can't, I just got off the call with a gentleman today. We were talking about the conversation around burnout and how one of the things to prevent burnout is to have a good, strong social network, even if it's two, three, one friend that you can just kind of have a chat with and lean on. It's been shown through research, and this gentleman didn't have anybody. His closest friends live in another country, so it's like, well, I can't find friends for you. You're just gonna have to go step out and create a new network.
Yeah, yeah.
Please.
I'm a big believer in like who you spend time with, right? Like it's who you become. So before we get to our final question, where can people connect with you, learn more about you? Yeah,
Well, the easiest way is to connect with me on LinkedIn. That's probably the most used platform that I go on personally. You can also connect with me on Instagram. I don't check really messages or anything, but LinkedIn, I'm pretty active on.
amazing. We'll put all your links in the show notes. So final question. Um, what is something controversial that you believe in?
Oh, wow. Well, the biggest thing right now is this topic of masculinity. And so I'm a strong believer in masculinity. I'm not a big fan of this concept of toxic masculinity because I think people have misunderstood it, misconstrued it. So I'm a firm believer in the differences between masculine and feminine and women and men. Um, and so I completely agree with people being whatever the sexual preference is, whatever gender it is. But I think what we've done is we've neutralized things to such a degree that it's hurting and hindering relationships and it's hurting society. So that is a controversial topic right now where a lot of people, a lot of guys are afraid to even talk about anything to do with men because it's almost like that cancel culture where it's like, sorry, you can't talk about it. Uh, you, if you're part of a men's group, or for me, leading men and showing men how to be better leaders, it's almost taboo. But it's okay that there's tons of female groups out there, female only groups and female only leaders. But when it comes to the opposite, it's not appropriate, let's just say.
Yeah, I think we actually touched on it in our previous recording together. I'm going to link that also if people want to watch that. Obviously, this show has gotten a lot worse in the past couple of years. But I'm in agreement with you. We need both the masculine and the feminine, and they each bring their own goodness. Like it's not one or the other, or trying to neutralize them. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here. It was really great getting to speak to you again, and I appreciate you making time to make it happen.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. This is great.